with me in my foul life.
Podcast world, what's up? Back at you, the Foul Life Podcast. Thank you all so much for the downloads and subscriptions. Truly humbling. I guess that's the wrong thing to say. I want to stay humble, so it doesn't really humble me to see the performance and the success of the Foul Life Podcast and its sister podcast, This Life Ain't For Everybody and Where the Payment Ends. But we truly appreciate the support, the attention to it. And I hope it's because of the diversity in topics and guests and the dedication to bringing you the best information and instruction and stories. Whatever we can conjure up, I want it to be legit. I want it to be real. And that's exactly what the Foul Life Podcast is. If we're not talking duck calling, we're talking duck hunting. If we're not talking duck hunting, we're talking goose hunting. If we're not talking goose hunting, we're talking about goose calling. It's pretty much everything wrapped up in one. And then you take it to the next steps of the culinary part of it and living off the land and our provider brand. That's kind of where we want to take it. The direction of today's show is all of that kind of wrapped up in one. Our guest today, you're going to learn that he started hunting kind of like I did later in life. I think he was 39. We'll learn more about this when he went on his first waterfowl hunt and he became absolutely obsessed. And then he took it to the next level culinary wise with eating wild game nonstop. And part of his wife's health and her history of health led to them eating nothing but wild game in their household. So we're going to talk to Mr. Joel Kleefisch more pretty soon, but I got to talk to you about a couple of the partners that bring you the Foul Life Podcast. First, I want to say thank you to Meat Your Maker, made with meat processing and butchering and grinding and mixing and sealing. Their vacuum sealers are so legit. All of their different motors and sizes of grinders make it so easy to put wild game on your table, to put it vacuum sealed in your freezers for a couple weeks, a couple months, depending on when you plan on getting to it. Look to Meat, M-E-A-T. You can find them on social media websites, Meat Your Maker, made by Meat. And I have so much pride and passion when I take it off the shelves, use it, clean it, put it back on the shelves. I can't wait to get to processing more and more with our meat partner, our meat family. Thank you so much, Meat Your Maker. Today's episode of the Foul Life Podcast is also brought to you by Rigid. Rigid Industries own the night. We have to see. Everything is better in the light. What we do, we travel. We're accessing back roads, county roads, country roads, dirt roads, cornfields, pea fields, going through gates, going through ditches, going over small, just tiny tractor bridges. We have to be able to see. Then we flick the switch on our trailer and we can light up the land to see exactly where we want to be from a fence or a tree line. Our decoys are getting set up. Everything looks different in the dark. You want to light it up as much as you can. And that's exactly why we depend on Rigid for all of our lighting needs and our bumpers, our light bars, our fog lights, our travel lights, our trailer lights, our headlamps. Everything that they build is 100% by far the best when it comes to LED lighting. So check them out, Rigid Industries. Thank you to all of our partners that continuously support us at the Foul Life and Banded Brands. And without further ado, I got Mr. Joel Kleefisch here coming at you live from his man cave right here in the great state of Wisconsin. He's wearing a Pepperdine t-shirt. He's got family that's went to Pepperdine. His wife is running for governor of Wisconsin for 2022. How are you, my man, Joel?
Man, I'm doing great. It's great to have you guys in town.
It has been?
Yeah, it's been a blast.
Kind of overrated.
Not when it comes to the food, brother.
It's been good, huh?
Yeah, heck yeah.
So the whole lifestyle of hunting is pretty cool. I hear you talk about your deer and you got some stands. You have some turkey stories, and we even have eaten wild turkey already. Tonight was the second time I've had your wild turkey. We're going to talk about some of those recipes. But it seems to me like you're eating up with ducks and geese. Like, is it fair to say that you would forget about deer hunting and turkey hunting and you could just waterfowl hunt the rest of your life if need be?
It's 100% fair. Absolutely.
Why? What does it for you with the waterfowl?
When you are out in the field and that sun starts to crack the horizon, you're setting up the decoys, you got to realize 99% of the people in the United States are missing that on a daily basis. That sunrise comes up, you see the shadows of the decoys, you start to realize if your decoy placement is decent or if you got to start moving things around. And the anticipation. Isn't life about anticipation? The anticipation of what's to come. means you have the opportunity to hunt something. And you know what I always say to people, the most exciting thing about waterfowl hunting is you're fooling Mother Nature. If you're sitting in a deer stand, you're waiting for a deer to walk by. The difference with waterfowl hunting is you're setting something up. Your setup and your calling is literally fooling Mother Nature to get close to you. And when you have those geese 10 yards in front of the foot bag and they're wide open like Volkswagens, there's nothing more exciting. If your heartbeat is not beaten at that point, there's something wrong. And the beauty of being able to take that and eat it for lunch or dinner or breakfast even sometimes, not much beats that.
I love the part about I was thinking about it tonight of you're setting up and you're kind of putting all these pieces of this puzzle together and you have this arsenal and you picture it, right? You visualize, all right, this is what I'm going to do. The wind's coming out of the southwest at 12 to 15, gusts of 18, perfect waterfowl. And we got sunshine mixed with some clouds and we have geese in the area and a lot of them were on the X. And you start thinking about I love the anticipation of what could happen, but what really gets me is that time of, okay, we're ready, let's get in the blinds. And then those words of, hey, all right, boys, load up, or hey, boys and girls, load them up. And then that point right there to when you're scanning every direction. You know there's a roost this way, you know there's a river this way, there's an oxbow this way, there's a gravel pit this way. They could come from all these different directions because you can't follow them all off of the feed every day back to their loaf. So I'm sitting there going, where are they going to come from? Where am I going to spot that first line? And I kind of I don't really get competitive. I don't voice it, but I want to be the person that's in the game of like, all right, here they come. And you don't want to sound like you've never been there before, but it's hard not to. You're always like, hey, you want to be like, hey guys, get ready from the left right here. But it's always like, whoa, get down. You know, it's like crazy. I've seen it so many times. And tonight I was still like so jacked up when I saw the first group of geese coming towards the X or the field we were in. That's the anticipation that I like. And then on top of that, what you just said is, yeah, the pieces of that puzzle that have to fit together. My favorite part's the calling and the dog work. But I love the decoying. I love the concealment and the blinds and all of those different parts of the hunt and your arsenal and your platform. But man, there's just something about knowing that we're not just waiting for something to walk by, like you're saying, or fly by. We're setting up this like little booby trap of perfection, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you could have 40 of them in your lap.
Yeah. And nobody ever wants to admit it, but when you're sitting in the blind, everybody wants to be the guy who spots them first. Yeah. Nobody ever talks about it, but everybody loves to see, I see geese. And then there's the subsection of that, of the guy who wants to say, I hear geese. Yeah. So then you start getting in your head, you think you're hearing them, and then you do hear them, and the anticipation of it. So there's no doubt the competition's happening in the blind. You're thinking to yourself, I want to be the guy to spot them. I want to be the guy to spot them.
And I got
first.
so overzealous yesterday, I spotted them, and it ended up being 4 sandhills. And I was like down, ready to call, and I'm like, wow, their wing beats are moving really slow. Yep. Really slow. That field that we hunted yesterday had a ton of potential in it. I think that the number one reason that we didn't mop them up that you could have is because of the wind. You just can't. Without wind, waterfowl hunting is very, very tough.
It's tough. It's tough because if you get a wind that starts at 7 miles an hour usually or so, they're going to land into the wind. And yesterday, that's the thing too about waterfowl hunting. You learn as much every time you go as you knew before that. And yesterday, we switched the spread up, and that helped us a little bit. But we realized we should have tucked under a tree, with the blind work at first. Well, we learned that because they were spotting us over the top. Everything was floating in over the top again because the wind wasn't there. So we didn't have the wind, so they can circle as much as they want. And you know what? Every group of geese, all those eyes are looking down, looking for something that isn't just right. So you got to combine. You've got to have the hide right. And somebody once told me, waterfowl hunting, when you think you're brushed in enough, brush in more. You got to have the hide, the decoy spread right. In order to trick Mother Nature and set up that booby trap, you have to have something that looks completely natural to that waterfowl that's coming in. And that is the toughest part. And that is why it feels so successful when you do succeed at it.
Yeah, it's a great point, is that there's just, I don't know what the percentages is of success in waterfowl hunting. There are people that can run up, 10 days in a row of killing them, but what really constitutes success? But I will be the first to say that, look at us the last 2 days. We were on the X tonight, and we made one vital mistake to our success. And it cost us. And the thing about being a waterfowl hunter is that I questioned myself. I drove into the field. And I want your opinion on this, is that I go a lot of places, right? I get to go, and I'm very thankful and honored that somebody like you and Luke and this entire crew would roll out the red carpet, take time out of their lives, get us permission on their fields, knowing that we're hunting for the camera, which completely changes everything. They're taking days out of their season to live up to what we are trying to get done, right? We try to give back as much as we can. We want to make it fun. We want to take care of you guys in a lot of ways. But the bottom line is that there's waterfowl season comes and goes quick. And when you dedicate this many days to this task, we've had 2 subpar days as far as numbers go. We've learned things. We've killed some, but not many. My question to you, Joel, is when you go into a place and you're hunting with people that have been so successful and they've worked so hard to acquire what you guys have, the network, the farmers, the permission, the spreads, the trailers, the arsenals, everything that you guys have is legit. I knew that we shouldn't be doing what we were getting ready to do tonight. But I have a hard time being that guy because I could easily come across as like, well, who are you? What do you mean? This is our spot. We've hunted here so many times. We know what we're doing. But I really wanted to tell them, like, we should not be setting up here. We're not going to get them here. This is going to be a freaking vortex of a black hole to these geese. They will not do it in here. I really knew they wouldn't. The hill was too steep. And then sure enough, after when we learned it, the guys are like, dude, they got up on the hill and they looked down and they're like, you can't even see the decoys. It's so dark down in here. So my question to you is like, how do you approach that when you know that you have some knowledge that would help these guys, but you also understand and respect that they've done it so many times and killed them so many times? It's hard, right? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. But, waterfowl hunting is the art of negotiation, because everybody in your group, everybody in every group you encounter, and everybody in our group, and we have a pretty tight-knit group, we all have our opinions of how a field should be set up and where it should be hunted, how it should be hunted, layouts versus A-frames, field edges versus fence lines versus the middle of the field. Everybody has those opinions, and waterfowl hunting is the art of overanalyzation. So at some point, you got to make that decision. Now, somebody like you with the experience you have around the country and your negotiation skills, at least what I've been able to see so far, is, it's tough. But it's really tough, especially in a situation where you're going into somebody else's territory. But I do think that the decision maybe should have been pressed to hunt on the higher ground. Those geese, they love to land uphill. Now, tonight you had a wind. You chose to hunt the afternoon instead of the morning because you had some wind, which I think was the right decision. But those geese, when they're coming over land and they're even higher, they've got more time to look down into the spread, analyze it, and they really are leery of kind of going over the hill to get to a lower spot in the field. They always seem to land kind of on the upward side of the hill, and they land with their feet facing up. I mean, they got to bend them back a little further, but it seems like those Tostito feet like to land on an upward hill.
Blue Tostito feet.
Blue corn tortilla chip feet.
It's funny that you say that, because a lot of scouting comes back to me where we'll send a lot of rigs out. We're in Saskatchewan or Alberta, and they'll be taking pictures or they'll be taking notes, right, of what they're seeing. And I always tell people, first thing in scouting is that you always go back and put your A field to bed and make sure that they didn't get chased out of there by a hawk or coyote. And there's a lot of things that go into picking which field you're going to hunt. But a lot of waterfowl hunters, in my opinion, make this mistake, is that they go in there and they see the birds where they're at that moment, but they didn't necessarily see them coming into the field. And they're like, well, they're down the slope. Well, they walk down. The geese can walk. Okay, they can walk as easy as they can fly. So they will land high and walk low to avoid their feathers being, blown all over the place by the wind.
Yeah. Very
rarely do they land down in a hole. What I like to do is, if you can picture this, listening audience, is you have the hill and what we would call the apex of the hill on the top. Is that the apex?
Yeah.
If you could picture yourself with the wind at your back and you're at the slant at the very top of the hill where it starts to fall off, and you can put your ground blinds in that position to where you're not like laying on a vertical angle to where you're uncomfortable and have to have unbelievable abs like I do to sit up and shoot these. That was a joke, Joel. To shoot these birds approaching, you kind of want to be laying at an angle to where you're looking up a little bit at the apex of the hill, and you kind of run your decoy spread from you know, the big bulk of them down by you to where you can tell the geese walk down there, and then you kind of finger them up to the higher point to where those incoming approaching geese or ducks, they're like, okay, I see them. They're on the apex and they're not scared anymore. They'll come to gun range because they know that those geese have landed there and walked down off of that knob to get out of the wind.
100%.
I hope that makes sense to people.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And remember, I mean, geese and ducks for that matter, but geese in particular, they are looking for predators when they land. And you tell me where you get a better view of the predator. You get a better view of potential predators on the top of the hill. Where do predators come from? The bottom of the hill, the swallows. They come from the marshes, the field edges, the wood edges, the wood lines, the fence lines. That's where predators come from. When they're coming in for that final landing, the last thing they're looking for is where those predators are going to come from, and that's going to make them leery. But they're also, you know, they're also smart enough to know that they can land on the hill and take their advice from the other geese that have walked down the hill to maybe a wet spot or a spot they can get some water while they're eating. So they'll look at that ahead of time as well, and they'll realize that they can walk to where they need to go. And that's a really good point. A lot of people who look at a field and they see where the geese are, that does not mean whatsoever that's where they landed.
Right. And if you're not there to see where they're landing, then you're kind of doing yourself a disservice of, well, we need to hunt this field tomorrow. Well, maybe we need to take another day. Take your time and let that field build. There's some elements to that. You don't want somebody else to go in and get permission. You don't want the landowner to change their mind, or there's a lot of things that go into. Some people only have one day a week to hunt, right? So I look at it like the mistake we made tonight was so evident. The first flock comes out, right? They're coming off the roost. Here they come. They literally do it like they read the script, but they didn't finish. I'm saying they approached the field, entered the calling zone that I call it, to where they can hear our calling, and literally were like, I was looking at the guys going, holy smokes, this is going to be unreal. They were balled up, like just losing elevation, talking back to us. And all of a sudden, they didn't like flare like they saw a coyote or the boogeyman, but they really went, no.
No thanks.
That ain't us. That's not what we would do. There's no way all of those live geese would be that close to this when they have all of this. It's kind of like, well, this isn't a 10-acre field. This is, I don't know how big these checks are here, but it was at least 40 acres.
Yeah.
This section, it's a big cornfield. And then not one group, and I'm talking at least 20 groups of geese came to this field tonight. Not one group after the first group checked up on us once. They came over the hill, they heard our calling, they saw our flagging, and they literally diverted and said, something's wrong. Now, I don't know how many hunters are in this area. I don't know how pressured these geese are. Have no idea. I know that this landowner said that his field has not been hunted once this whole year. He even went as far as saying that nobody's ever asked us to goose hunt. What are you guys, idiots? We've heard turkeys hunters and deer hunters asking for permission. But I literally look back at it, Joel, like, why didn't I just say no? I don't want to piss anybody off, but maybe they'll just be like, yeah, he's right, let's do it. But the other part of that is that these guys are like, well, this is where we can hide the cameras. Because I made it very evident that this is very difficult to hide cameras. And without knowing these landowners, a lot of times we dig in with ground blinds and get our camera guys real low and then have a tripod spread out with some burlap and netting over it. That's what you need to do to really kill these birds. Is this considered the late season right now at this time in November for Wisconsin?
This is mid-season. This is typically what we call this kind of the mid-season lull, because you've got your birds that are stale and they're tough and they're used to being hunted, and we haven't gotten that late push from Canada yet.
We need that.
We need that. Yeah, we need some cold weather to bring that late push. But you made a couple really good points. One is that when you're shooting shooting for a show and you've got cameramen who are out there who need to get the shot and they're moving on the birds, the camera's moving. You want to put, your hide is quintessential, especially on tough birds. And so that does make a huge difference. And a lot of times I think it's that we let intellect get in the way of instinct. Intellect over instinct isn't a good thing because geese are nothing but, they're not the smartest birds, they're instinctive. So a lot of times we will talk as hunters and we're attempting to use intellect for our setup versus comparing it to what's the instinct of the bird going to be. And if you do something that's not their instinct, you're going to end up with a goose egg, no pun intended, which is what happened because their instincts told them don't go down in that valley.
What would you say? You made a comment the other night that, is it a 90-day season in Wisconsin?
I think it is a 90-day season. We go into January this year.
And you and Luke missed 4 days of the 2020 season.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so that's kind of psychotic.
It's a little
that's crazy,
psychotic,
right? But that's
yes.
what it is. Because you can't have them back. You can't be like, oh,
that's right.
What would you? First of all, I know that you're a pretty level-headed guy with what you do for a living and what you've done. I don't know you very well. I think you're badass, but your success isn't based on a limit. I can tell that that's the personality you are. But what percentage of those 90 days, okay, let's say you hunted 85 days out of 90.
Okay.
That's a lot, okay? Yeah. How many days were successful if you had to guess looking back on last year? Well, screw that question. This year, you've hunted a lot of days with Luke and the guys already.
Yeah.
You guys have been hunting since when? October what?
September 1st.
September 1st. That's the early season.
Yeah.
What's the limit in the early season?
5 per person per day.
That's crazy that Wisconsin, because there's a lot of geese here.
It's awesome.
I mean, you have 15 bird days in freaking some states early. You would think it'd be a little bit higher, but 5 is awesome, and now it's 3 in the regular season.
Yeah.
How many days have been successful this year?
Oh, man.
50%?
Oh, 70%?
So
85%?
So this lull, we're hunting geese that have been here for a while.
Yeah. We're hunting tough geese right now.
Damn it.
Tough geese and hiding the camera crew is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy because I'm picking the states that I know that I know the success has been there with panel blind camera hides. Kansas, Nebraska, Arkansas, spec hunting, Oklahoma, Texas. It's crazy to think that we could not decoy birds to a tree line. But where I'm going with this, Joel, isn't it crazy to you? Like, I've decoyed thousands of Canada geese, a lot of lessers, but a lot of graders too, in Kansas. Crazy amounts. Oklahoma's that way too a lot of the times. You can get a lot of good, and I'm talking trees that are 30 feet tall. Like, there's no way geese would work into this, right? The boogeyman's right there. Ducks, they're a little bit easier with spinning wings and dry field hunting ducks, but it's crazy that in some states, people look at you like, are you an asshole? Like, there's no way this is going to work. In Kansas, you could set up a panel blind made out of chicken wire and burlap, have 2 little buddy heaters in there, have a grill cooking breakfast with lawn chairs and a freaking stereo system playing. And when you turn the stereo down, you see geese, and they will finish right out in front of you with a 10-man crew out there. I've seen it done hundreds of times. But up here, it's like, I don't know if you could really tree line hunt. Can you edge hunt for geese up here? Do you see a lot of success with it? And what does it take to get that success?
Well, number one, you can, like you said, success is measured in 8 million different ways. In Wisconsin, more Canada geese per capita are killed in Wisconsin than any other state in the country.
Are you serious?
Yes. But then here's the other.
Why? Just because there's not as many hunters?
Well, it's just a fantastic flyway here. We've got the Mississippi River on one side and the Great Lakes on the other side. It's an absolute, very few states in the country can you hunt some of the greatest Canada goose hunting in the country along with puddle duck hunting, and you'll get sea ducks on Lake Michigan, Old Squaw. I mean, it's unbelievable hunting here in Wisconsin. But what that means is that the geese that are moving through here are getting hunted quite a bit. There's a lot of waterfowl hunting in Wisconsin, and we're continually trying to proliferate it, get more people into the sport. And I think that's happening. And shows like this and people like you are the ones who get, somebody to try it who's never tried it. But I think that tree line hunting is real tough. I used to go sit in the middle of a field with nothing on but a ghillie suit. And then they were right at my feet very often. I think in Wisconsin, the number one, predators we have in the southern region are coyotes, and the wolf population is so high up north that tree lines get really tricky here. That's kind of their only fear of a predator is on those tree and fence lines. We have a lot of successful hunts on tree and fence line hunting, and usually it's shooting them as they're floating over the top of our heads, much less kind of finishing in the decoys toward you. A lot of times it's that
Let me ask you that real quick. You make a great point right there. I don't want to interrupt you, but you started hunting later in life at 39.
Yeah.
I have that year right?
Yes, sir.
Are you satisfied with what you just said about the over the head? I know that we're going to get into your cooking. We might have to do part 2 of this because I know we're getting ready to have an awesome dinner. Tyler Stark and Traeger have supplied us with the new Traeger provisions tonight. People, you got to look into this. We're having ribs and chicken tonight. Everything included with sides, macaroni and cheese and potatoes, everything. But we might have to go into part 2 with Joel on this through the next couple days while we're in Wisconsin. Are you okay with that? You could go to a sporting clay range and say pull and have a target, a clay pigeon, float over your head and pow and see it explode. Are you a perfectionist when it comes to waterfowl hunting? Or do you just want that dead bird to put into the Traeger or the crock pot or whatever apparatus you're using? Are you okay with shooting them over the top of your head?
I'm 100% a hybrid between both of those. I'm definitely not a perfectionist when it comes to waterfowl hunting, but I think the joy and satisfaction, but I'll say on the other side of it, I'm not somebody running around adding up how many times we've gotten a limit. The hunting experience for me is about everything from the decoy setup to that sunrise to those boots down in the decoys. There's nothing more satisfying than that, because that is the ultimate fooling of Mother Nature. You have ultimately convinced that wild animal to come within 10 yards of you and land in front of you. That is the most exciting thing. At the same time, I don't have a problem if if there's no wind on a day and they're kind of floating 10 feet over your head and you're taking a shot at them. I don't like sky busting whatsoever. Don't support that, because you're going to put a lot of pellets into a lot of birds that are going to fly away and they could die later and you'll never find them. And ethical hunting is incredibly important. What you shoot, you want to end up on the dinner table. It's also why there's nothing I hunt that I don't eat. I'm a strong believer in eat what you kill. So I'm certainly not a perfectionist under any circumstance, but I do not measure the success of a hunt on whether you got a limit or not.
When you say eat what you kill, you would agree with this statement, I would assume, which I know assuming can do what you heard so many times in your life, make an ass out of you and me. But is it fair to say that Canada geese, I love when people call them Canadians. They said that today, and I'm like, if you killed a Canadian, you would go to prison. But they're terrible to eat. Would you agree with this statement?
That is the most misaligned,
isn't it crazy?
Misunderstood statement. Canada goose is one of the best table fares of all wild game, hands down, game over.
Why do you think that? I'm not saying that, because I've had it taste good so many times, but what makes it a good table fare? Is it the texture? Because they have a different texture than a speck. Is it the fattiness, the oils in it? There's not a ton of fat in a goose. There's oil in a goose because of their feathers and their migratory means of transportation, we should say. They do have some oils that keep their feathers lined the right way and insulated the right way. But why do you say that because you have elk? Jim Shockey told me that he can make a bear roast taste better than anything I could cook in the waterfowl world. I said, you're absolutely out of your mind. He said, bet. Let's bet. Okay, then you have moose, which I'm not a big moose fan. You know what? I'm not even a big bison fan. I like a bison steak, okay? I don't like bison hamburger at all. ground bison. It's not my favorite. But goose, Canada geese, speckled belly geese in the rice in California, the skin, the searing, the reverse searing, the rendering, it's amazing.
You're making me so hungry.
But Canada geese, what makes you say that statement?
Versatility.
Because there's so many things you can do with it?
Versatility. You can take a Canada goose, you can put it in a sous vide overnight, you can slice it as paper thin as you can, flash sear it on both sides like a piece of ahi tuna, and serve it up, and somebody would swear they're eating the finest piece
Wait a minute.
Kobe
This is not
beef.
in the sous vide though. You're talking about just a high heat griddle or a skillet.
Yep.
Like you could go on a Traeger Ranger and get your 400 degree, and you're telling me that you can sear it both sides like a piece of ahi tuna with some pepper, with some dry rub, whatever. And then what?
I actually, when I make it, I put it in the sous vide overnight. Then I thinly slice it, and then I'll put sesame seeds around the outside, and dip it in wasabi and teriyaki sauce, just like
Sushi.
It is to die for.
I assume very thin slice.
Thinly sliced. Yep.
Like butcher slice or
No,
knife slice?
I cut it with a knife. I mean, as thin as you can, like a thin slice of ahi tuna.
Are you tenderizing it before this process?
Well, that's pretty much what happens in the sous vide.
Okay, so you're taking it from the sous vide to the reverse sear.
Correct. Yep, 100%.
We should try that this week.
I
will be first to admit I've never had Canada goose in a sous vide. I've had deer. I've had a bunch of different ducks. I've never had Canada goose. Mitch Petrie, who is VP of programming for the Outdoor Channel, loves Traegers, but he also loves the sous vide. He's from Minnesota. He took me on my first muskie trip. The fish of, what do they call it? 10,000 casts.
10,000 casts, yeah.
It was like 3, and we had one figure 8 and at the boat, and we lost him. But gall, was it cool.
They're cool. Alligators, northern alligators.
Yes. But he bought me one. It shows up on my front porch. He's like, you got to do this. I'm like, you just bought me a sous vide. I love them.
They're amazing.
They're really, really cool. But Canada geese, it's like, man, it gets such a bad rap. And I've never, ever, and I mean this. You want to know one of the coolest recipes that just came to mind? Grant Kuiper's, Northern Saskatchewan. Pickles Canada goose and jars Canada goose. He does a jarring method that is unfreaking real. And then he does a buffalo wing kind of method of frying with no batter. He fries with batter. He jars. He pickles. He's got so many unorthodox ways because they kill so many Canada geese up there. I mean, this is in the land of freaking huge lake trout, walleyes, pike, like some of the best eating fish that you can have. I know that pike's different because of the bones, but people are scared of it, but it's really good if done right. But he takes so much time with this Canada geese, and then he serves it for appetizers before a meal at the lodge, and you're just like, holy shit, this is good.
Yeah.
Every bite. I don't know if I've ever had a bad bite of Canada goose. I really don't know if I have.
I'm telling you, it's so versatile. Sometimes we'll grind it. We'll take beef suet instead of pork, and we'll grind it with the Canada goose, because then you don't have to cook it all the way till it's dry. You don't have to cook it well done. You can cook it medium rare. So I'll take it and I'll grind it with beef suet, and then patty it out and throw some nice provolone in the middle of it, pinch it together, and make pizza burgers with it on the Traeger. It's to die for.
What's the meat cooked as?
It's Canada goose.
I know the meat. I know we're talking about Canada goose, but what was the process of it's not ground though?
Yeah, no, grind it. I'll grind it with beef suet, so beef fat.
Oh, beef fat.
Because
okay.
if you grind it with pork, you got to cook it to a higher temperature,
yes.
and then to well done essentially. But if you grind it with beef suet, with beef fat, then you can make it medium rare. You just cook it. You put it on the Traeger at a higher temperature, and you cook it like you're cooking a burger, and right as soon as you start to see that provolone ease out of the creases in the side of the burger, it's done. Put a little bit of Grandma Teofilo's pasta sauce on the top of it. Oh man.
Is that your grandma's last name, or is that a brand
That's
name?
my grandma's last name. She's long gone, but my mom, who's also 100% Italian, she's got the recipe down.
I want to learn that recipe, the pizza burger.
Well, she'll have to come over and tell you then, because I know it's not written
Well,
anywhere.
I've already eaten her pie crust with your Canada Goose pot pies, which I knew the goose was going to taste good because I showed you in the provider cookbook that I've done the pulled goose for a lot of years.
It's
It was
awesome.
taught to me by a guy from Michigan, Joe Robinson. We were in Ontario. I told you that story. But the one thing that blew my mind the most about the recipe was I've never done gravy like that. And I was so impressed with how that gravy turned out, just the entire process, which was really simple and quick.
Yeah, simple.
But gosh, did it turn out perfect. And then to throw in the peas and the carrots, people like Tyler Stark, he might fool you, but that dude eats a lot of good meals. They cook Traeger meals 4 days a week or 5 days a week at headquarters. The best pitmasters in the world come in and out of there like it's woodwork, and they're cooking nonstop. And he's like, dude, that Canada Goose blew my mind. Blew my mind. He was talking about it again today. So I've had that. I've had her pie crust. I wanted to try these pizza burgers. I want to have another podcast. I know that we've been doing these quick little excerpts here in Wisconsin because, as you can see, we're just nonstop. We go, hunt, film, do this, then cook, then set up, then whatever. But I want to get into what you did for a while with the Wildlife Administration laws. I want you to be thinking about this of the intimidation factor of waterfowl hunting. I've been talking to a lot of people because everybody's like, we got to get new people involved. We need new blood in the pipeline. We have to have the next generation. Well, there's a lot of new hunters in hunting because of COVID. There's a 790% growth in fishing license buys. Waterfowl hunting is undoubtedly, in my opinion, the most difficult. Now, you have to be in great shape to walk a mountain and kill a Dall sheep. Hell yeah, you do. But I can get in that shape. And then I'll get 300 or 500 yards with my 30-06 or my 300 Win Mag or my short mag or whatever I mean, and I'll smoke him. I'm not saying it's easy. Please, people, don't write in and say you're an asshole for saying that big game hunting is easy. It's not easy. But waterfowl hunting, with the financial commitment of having the right arsenal, on top of that, now to be the best at it, you really should learn how to call. You can hunt with somebody that does, but it's much better if you can call yourself ducks and geese and be proficient with it. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I don't have a dog. Not any dog will do. You could say that any dog will do, but they won't. I don't want a squealer. I don't want a breaker. I want something that performs day in and day out as a conservation tool. And then on top of that, Joel, you have all the laws. And on top of that, you have federal laws and state laws, state agent laws and federal laws. I've had game wardens come up to me at a boat ramp to check my bag limit or to check my license and tell me you have too many redheads. And I'm like, sir, those are gadwalls. Like they literally did not even know how to identify the duck themselves. And they're a state agent game warden. Now, game wardens are whatever you want to think about them. They do their job and they have a lot of bad rap because they're on edge a lot of the times because 100% of their confrontations probably include a firearm. So they're really like kind of, whatever. My point to you, Joel, is there's a freaking reason why there's 4.5 million turkey hunters, 14.5 million, 14,700,000. I don't even know the number, but it's almost 15 million deer hunters in the country. There's more predator hunters in America than there are duck and goose hunters. There's a lot of factors that tell people. On top of that, you got the cold weather, the ice, the early mornings. I want you to be thinking about this as we end this podcast, the Fowl Life podcast. Thank you all for listening. I want to come back with part 2. Talk about some of your experiences of laws that you helped getting written, getting bills you've helped get passed. But I really want you to get raw if you can, if you're legally binded to. And I know that you have politics in your family and all this. But I want to talk about the laws of waterfowling and why it's so intimidating and why people are like, you know what? I'm not even going to try. I can't tell a freaking blue wing from a freaking hen redhead, and I can't tell this from that. And then you're telling me I got to do it when they're flying. Then you're telling me I got to use steel shot. Then you're telling me that I can only shoot 2 hen mallards, but they were party hunting. We don't know who hit what. There's all these laws that go into it. How do we get new people introduced to this lifestyle? I don't consider it a sport. I consider it a culture and a lifestyle. How do we get new people involved and give them the confidence that, hey, it's really okay to be a duck hunter. You can do it. I think it's really difficult. I don't mean to sound soapboxy or oh my God, dude, this is a pity party. We're brain surgeons here. We're not by any means. But come on, it's difficult, in my opinion, to be successful. Is this fair to say?
Well, I'm looking forward to that because there are answers to each of those questions. And frankly, one of the really exciting things about Wisconsin is that we have some of the answers to some of those questions. And we've literally been working on them, and we're starting to see them succeed. Because the bottom line is, it is too intimidating. So many people can say, I don't have to question what type of white-tailed deer is walking into below my stand. And there are so many laws that govern specificities of waterfowl hunting. You have different bag limits for different species. You can have 4 mallards, 2 of which, as of this year, can be hen mallards, but you still have a bag limit of 6. So all those things are entirely difficult and critical, and you need to study. One of the things that I'm super excited about, you know that I spent time in the legislature, 14 years in the Wisconsin House of Representatives, and I actually was the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, which was a dream come true for me. And we took that book and we started reducing regulations in it. But one of the most essential things we did was pass the mentored hunting law in the state of Wisconsin. And what that says is that you don't have to know everything and have gone through all these courses. You can be a mentored hunter. You can go with an experienced hunter, and as long as you're within arm's reach of them, you can hunt with them, having never gone through the hunter safety course and gotten your things. And we're hoping, and we're not hoping, I've seen it. I take mentored hunters every year by the dozens. And and Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter who you are. When you are exposed to firearms in the way that they're meant to be used, and you're taking something from the field to the table, you're going to convert people. I have a friend of mine, I was a Republican legislator. He was a Democrat staffer. He never held a firearm before. His name's Peter. And I took him, shot a gun with him the first time. He got comfortable with that, and he said, do you think you could ever take me waterfowl hunting? I took him out the first time. We had some geese come in on a river situation. The look on that guy's face, he called me at the beginning of this year, and he says, if you ever got room, please, I'd love to come again. So I invited him. He shows up. He's fully decked in waterfowl clothing, head to toe. Banded clothing, head to toe. He's got his semi-automatic shotgun that he bought.
Benelli.
He's got his Traeger hat on.
Black Cloud ammo.
And this guy who philosophically, politically, he and I probably agree on nothing. In fact, he works for the administration that my wife is running against. And he and I are friends and share the field together. And he never knew what it was like. But through the mentored hunting program in Wisconsin, he's now got his hunter safety.
Let me ask you this real quick. Did he ever, in his tenure in politics, did he ever try to outlaw hunting or the Second Amendment right in the state of Wisconsin?
No.
Did he wasn't on any of those kind of surgeons, I would call it, of like, hey, we got to get this done, and then all of a sudden he got turned the other way.
No, let me just say this: we started the Sportsman's Caucus. Paul Ryan was in Congress at the time, and he had the Congressional Sportsman's Caucus, and they called and said, Joel, would you like to start one for the state of Wisconsin, called the Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucuses. We started it. On our first event, we had shooting tables set up. We had 22 people who had never touched a firearm shoot a firearm for the first time in their lives, and I can tell you there are people who were in that. He was one of those people, and he now is a dyed-in-the-wool hunter. Those people had the time of their lives, and they got to see a side of it that even some of them philosophically were completely opposed to, who are now saying, this is good. This is something good. The Second Amendment right is something good that should be exercised, utilized. I don't know how many guns you have here, but I have a lot at my pad and my different properties, right? None of them have ever done anything bad. No. We have to start voting with scientific data. We have to start using our emotions along the same lines of what you just talked to, Joel, and I love that story. I'd like to meet this man because we work with UC Davis, a very liberal campus in California, Berkeley and Davis. Yep.
They have what you call
It's out by Pepperdine.
Yeah, Davis that's more south, but this is Bay Area mainly, a little bit north of the Bay Area. But they have what you call the junior senior in the field program, where they take applicants, and I think it's up to 40. And obviously seniors get first billing because they probably got said no to their junior year. But the California Waterfowl Association takes them out to Paul Bonderson's. He made a great living in Silicon Valley in software. He has a place called Bird Haven, and he opens up his entire lodge and property to these college juniors and seniors. They've come from non-hunting, non-Second Amendment, non-gun owning families. They take them out, and they're straight up honest with them. This is what to expect. Are you interested? Yes, I am. It's part of the biology protocol at UC Davis. They come out, shotgun safety, everything from loading to shooting, cleaning, hunting, calling, blinds, concealment. They teach. It's pretty cool little workshop the first day. They go into butchering, processing, and preparing wild game. Holly Heiser, who works in CWA's headquarters in Roseville, California, she gives a whole deal. Her and her boyfriend Hank Shaw, he's got some great cookbooks, Duck Duck Goose and Deer Moose, and they are Buck Moose, Duck Duck Goose and Buck Moose. Hank Shaw's a hell of an outdoor wild game chef. They give a whole seminar tutorial on how to render fat and everything.
That's cool.
80% retention.
That's awesome.
80% of the students that go out, I've been on it twice. I remember Mandy, she comes out with me, kills her first sprig. She loses her mind. She's holding it up. I'm getting it mounted. She's calling her friends. She's what these kids do these days of Snapchatter and ticker tack or whatever, TikTok and all this shit. She's doing it all. She is so excited. 80% retention of second year license buyers out of this program. So if you think about it, it can work.
Yes.
10% of us Americans hunt. 10% of us Americans, I shouldn't say us Americans, 10% of Americans are anti-hunting. 80% are either unaware, uneducated, don't give a shit, or just kind of wondering. They're kind of curious. And you saw the uprise. I had people come into my house, hey, you got any meat? We can't get it at the store. COVID's got all the beef sold out. Yeah, here, take this. What is this? Wild turkey. What do you mean wild turkey? Well, I was in Montana and this Miriam's turkey came in and he fans out and it gobbles and all. And he's like, can I go? I'm like, yeah, let's go. It raised a lot of questions. So I want you to think about that. When we come back to part 2 with you, Joel, I want you to think about why. I really have an issue with stories I hear of intimidation factors of law enforcement, where I think it should be the other way around, of an education process and not an intimidation process of nobody wants to break the law. I don't want to. Now, if you're a poacher and you know you're baiting and you know you're shooting over the limit because you're quote unquote mad at them because you didn't have a good year last year, I don't want you being a hunter. Right. Don't be a bad steward of this lifestyle. But most of us don't want to break the law.
No, we don't.
But I don't want to be intimidated with a badge. I want to know, how do we get closer? And I'll use us as a great example. We've had game wardens come after us. They want to bust us. I don't want you to bust me. I'm not going to get busted. I don't break the law on purpose. If you could prove that I've done it on accident, okay. But why not use people to be voices and ambassadors and mentors to get people involved? Because so many people are scared of it. Now, I want you to think about this and your experience in the legislature and the House for 14 years, and how can we work together with different states and agencies and the feds across the country? Because this is a big deal to me. This is a big gray area to me of party hunting. You stand up and we're shooting and like, where do you put your birds? Well, they're greater Canada geese. You can kill 8 Canada geese apiece in Oklahoma. Where do you put those birds during the hunt? Well, you got to have all of your birds by your feet. You got to have your own separate pile for your officer. I can't move in here. They're big. Well, can I put them out in the spread to look like decoys like a lot of outfitters do? Can't do that. Is that illegal? It's done all the time. But you can't leave the field unless you got your birds with you. Transportation, all of this stuff that goes into these pictures. You see all these pictures on social media. Piles make smiles. You got a whole row, a whole bottom row, like cordwood. People take time stacking them up, right?
Yep.
Get their dog in place. And then the next thing you know is like, whose birds are whose? Who are you tagging your birds before the picture? Like, there's all these questions I have of like, why don't more people get into duck hunting because it is absolutely the greatest. So be thinking about that and your experiences and how we can not fight this. I want to be an advocate. I want to help people find their confidence and their comfort level in this game of waterfowl hunting. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of the wardens and the law enforcement out there, I mean, I'll go so far as to say, I think the vast majority of them want to help the sport, want to proliferate hunting. But those who step into a field with the idea that they're not going to leave that cornfield until they give out a couple tickets is something that is realistic, and it's wrong. And I think it's something we got to fight, figure out a way to change.
I agree. That's what I'm getting at. Because I've had encounters where I'm just like, whoa.
Oh, I'll tell you a story
whoa.
You won't believe.
Okay, well, I wanted to come back with your story, so be thinking about the story. We'll be back with part 2. Joel, the man, his wife Becky's going to be running for 2022 governor. We're going to talk about Mr. Ted Nugent on the next one.
He's the greatest.
That was cool the other night.
That was so cool.
This is a great place, Wisconsin. We've had curds. I had cheese curds. I want to go over what cheese curds are. A lot of people don't know what curds are. I want to know what squeaky cheese is. I learned that today. I want to learn a little bit about the Wisconsin culture. This place, I believe, if I remember right, has more bars. You said it has more geese harvested per capita than any state in the country. I think Milwaukee has more bars per capita than any city in America. Does Wisconsin have more bars per capita than any state in America? There's a lot. Every highway or
I believe it does. More bars than churches. That's
every back road I'm on, it's like supper club, bar, grill, boom, boom. It's just like
a restaurant in Wisconsin is a bar. They're synonymous.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about fish fries. I want to talk about cheese curds. I want to talk about Bob Uecker. I want to talk about Brewers baseball. I want to talk about Lambeau Field. There's so much culture in Wisconsin, and it's beautiful. And there's a lot of waterfowl hunting. I'm Chad Belling. Thank you to Meet Your Maker, Meat Products, Processing, Butchering. Thank you to Rigid Industries. Own the night. Light up your world. Stay safe out there, America. Thank you for joining us right here at the Fowl Life Podcast. Brand new episodes of the Fowl Life TV. Benelli's The Fowl Life, exclusively airing on the Outdoor Channel, available as of November 15th. I can't wait for you to see our final 7 episodes. Check out brand new episodes of This Life Ain't For Everybody podcast and Where the Pavement Ends podcast. And please get you a copy of the brand new Provider Cookbook and our series of 10 dry rubs, The Provider. Joel, thank you. We'll be back with part 2. Tom, Jake, hit that button. This is 2 a.m. Logic. The song is called My Fowl Life.